2. Jeremiah, I didn't see the second notification.
It's good.
We're good? Okay. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to have all of you here today on November 9, 2025. We are now starting session number 8 of Martha Root.
Seven. Seven.
I'm sorry, everybody. We're one away from the last one. We are session 7 of 8 of Martha Root. Thank you, Violetta. We came off here a little to a rocky start, but we are telling all of you now this is session number 7. It is November 9. We have one more session left, so hang on tight, everyone. With that being said, we welcome Miss Violetta Zane once more as we continue the life story of Miss Violetta Zane's Martha Root series. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for this lovely introduction. Let me just get my slideshow sorted. It's appearing correctly, yes?
Yes.
Welcome to Martha Root, part 7, Perseverance. And you're going to see why I called this session Perseverance. But before we start, I want to share something. That I received an email last week from a dear friend of mine, Mr. Fouad Izzadinia in Johannesburg, who offered a very perceptive insight into Martha Root that I want to share because it's very relevant to today's session. This is what Mr. Izzadinia said. Such were the enthralling stories of our unique heroine, built by the blessed hands of Abdul Baha. He literally made her a new soul and blew the Holy Spirit in her. You're going to see exactly why I chose to share this now with the next few sessions. Chapter 1, a monumental decade. 43 countries. Between February 1926 and September 1937, the 11 years we're studying today, Martha Root traveled 128 times between 43 countries. Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Austria, Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, Portugal, Spain, France, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, Serbia, Turkey, Greece, Croatia, Bosnia, Slovakia, Albania, Cyprus, Lebanon, Egypt, Haifa, Syria, Iraq, Iran, India, Pakistan, Myanmar, Singapore, the Philippines, Hong Kong, China, Japan, the United States, and Canada. In addition to her 9 audiences with Queen Marie of Romania between 1926 and 1937, the 11 years we're concerned about with today, Martha also met in person with 17 other members of royalty, presidents, maharajas, and religious leaders. So, of course, Queen Marie of Romania, 9 times, but then King Zog of Albania, King Faisal of Iraq, King Hakon of Norway, Dr. Ichiki Kitokuro, the minister of the Japanese imperial household for Emperor Hirohito, Princess Ileana of Romania, Princess Olga, Princess Marina, Princess Elizabeth of Greece and Denmark, Prince Paul of Yugoslavia, Prince Mohammed Ali Pasha of Egypt, Bhupinder Singh, Maharaja of Patiala, Sir Pratap Chandra Banjdeo, the Maharaja of Mayurbhanj, Thomas Masaryk, the first president of Czechoslovakia, Edvard Beneš, the second president of Czechoslovakia, Wilhelm Miklas, president of Austria, Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, and Dr. Erling Eidem, Archbishop of Sweden. The Guardian had asked Martha Root to focus her efforts and energies on congresses and large events which drew large crowds in order to raise the profile of the Baha'i faith. Between 1926 and 1937, Martha attended 24 congresses, but the number is likely higher. the Universal Esperanto Congress in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1926, the Universal Esperanto Congress in Gdansk, Poland in 1927, the Swedish National Esperanto Congress in Stockholm in 1927, the Esperanto Peace Congress in Prague in 1927, the Annual Peace Congress of Norway in Voss in 1927, the Congrès Mondial des Associations in Brussels in 1927, the International Congress for the Elimination of Racial Prejudice in Brussels in 1927, the Universal Religious Peace Conference in Geneva in 1928, the Universal Esperanto Congress in Antwerp, Belgium in 1928, the German National Esperanto Congress in 1928, and this is a picture of Martha at that Congress holding the photograph of Abdul Baha dressed in white. This photograph was taken at one of the two Baha'i sessions at the Esperanto Congress in Germany. The Interreligious Congress in Le Locle in 1928, the Swiss National Esperanto Congress in 1928, the Universal Religious Peace Conference in Geneva in 1928, the League of Nations in Geneva in 1928, the Hungarian National Esperanto Congress in 1929, the Universal Congress of Education in Zurich in 1929, the Conference of the Extraordinary Session of the League of Nations on Disarmament called by China in Geneva in 1932, the Universal Esperanto Congress in Paris in 1932, the Czech National Esperanto Congress in 1932, the Bulgarian National Esperanto Congress in 1933, the Yugoslav National Esperanto Congress in 1933, the Lithuanian National Esperanto Congress in 1934, and the Universal Esperanto Congress in Stockholm in 1934. At the Guardian's request, between November 1928 and June 1929, Martha visited all the Baha'i centers in Germany and every single German university except for two. I was able to find 30 in the biography Lioness at the Threshold. She visited Stuttgart, Esslingen, Heilbronn, Karlsruhe, Zuffenhausen, Göppingen, Geislingen, Tübingen, Munich, Wrocław in Poland, Wrocław in Poland, Warszawa in Poland, and then back to Germany with Heidelberg, Darmstadt, Freiburg, Marburg, Bad Kreuznach, Würzburg, Göttingen, Münster, Halle, Rostock, Greifswald, Hamburg, Magdeburg, Bonn, Frankfurt, Gießen, Kiel, Leipzig, Berlin. The Guardian asked Martha Root to focus on American universities like she had with German universities. Martha obliged and toured as many universities as she could between January 1931 and February 1932. I found 40, but there are likely more. She started with the University of Hawaii, San Jose State Teachers College, Stanford University, UC Berkeley, Fresno State Normal School, and the Unitarian School of Religion in California, the University of Washington, Reed College in Portland, Oregon, the Colorado Agricultural College, Iliff School of Theology in Colorado, the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, the University of Illinois, Northwestern University, North Park College, Lewis Institute, the Garrett Biblical Institute, the Francis Parker School, the Jewish People's Institute, and the Art Institute in Chicago, Alliance College and Allegheny College in Pennsylvania, the University of New Hampshire, Harvard University, Boston University, Columbia University, Hunter College, New York University, and Vassar College in New York State, the Cheney Training School for Teachers, Swarthmore College, and Haverford College in Pennsylvania, American University, Mount Vernon Seminary, Howard University, and Minor Normal College in Washington, D.C., Chevy Chase School for Girls, Morgan College in Maryland, and Virginia State College in Virginia. Saintliness. During 11 years, Martha traveled to 43 countries, had 26 audiences with royalty and presidents, attended 24 congresses, visited 30 German universities, and 40 American universities. Martha's life defies human understanding. After what we just witnessed, it's impossible to understand how anyone can accomplish such superhuman feats. But Martha did all this while cancer was ravaging her body. And Martha didn't have a strong constitution to begin with. Martha was a small woman. She was 5'3". She was very fragile and she had always been prone to illness. Martha caught the flu several times a year. She caught malaria in Africa. She had a heart condition. That's the mystery of Martha Root. How could she do this? If you look at Martha strictly from a materialistic point of view, it seems physically impossible for a woman who suffers so much with such a frail health to accomplish such transcendent feats of heroism. But you can't ever look at Martha from that point of view. You always have to consider Martha from a spiritual standpoint. Because from a spiritual standpoint, the suffering, the illnesses, the flus, her heart condition, the malaria, every single thing, the cancer, turned every step that Martha took into a sacrifice, and her physical suffering becomes the reason she's able to soar to such heights of heroism. Marjorie McCormick is a Baha'i who went on pilgrimage to Haifa from November 3rd to November 16th, 1937, and she wrote in her notes from her pilgrimage that Shoghi Effendi spoke to the pilgrims about Martha Root. He was mentioning the Dawnbreakers, the early defenders of the faith from the ministry of the Bab. And this is very important because really Martha Root's heroism is reminiscent of only one thing to me. It's reminiscent of the Babi heroes and martyrs from the Babi dispensation. So the Guardian spoke about the Dawnbreakers, and then he said, and I quote, "They were heroes, but not saints. Martha Root is a hero and a saint." Of course, this is a pilgrim note, but I want to share with you a second pilgrim note. 16 years later, another Baha'i named Ben Levy was on pilgrimage between March 9th and March 16th, 1953. And he recorded a very similar statement that the Guardian at the dinner table at the Western Pilgrim House made about Martha Root. Martha Root combined three qualities: martyr, heroine, and saint. A unique distinction. Saintliness is very rare. It comes from purity of motive. Spirituality. One of the keys to understanding how Martha Root accomplished so much despite so many personal challenges was her relationship to prayer. Martha spent an extraordinary amount of time in a state of prayer. And she once told Doris McKay, one of her friends, "Whenever I enter a city, I pray 9 times the tablet of Ahmad, praying that doors will open to teach the faith." I wrote down every city I could find for her whole life, and Martha visited over 600 cities. Martha considered her entire life to be a state of prayer, even down to her breath. She said, "Every breath almost is a prayer to be a channel, to be ready when opportunity comes." According to many of Martha's friends, Martha didn't just pray, she carried out full-on conversations with Abdul Baha her whole life. When Dorothy Baker asked Martha Root how she was able to accomplish so much in the face of so many tests, Martha answered, "Dorothy, when I'm faced with a difficulty, I use the tablet of Ahmad every day for 9 days, asking God in the name of that holy tablet to remove the difficulty. If I am faced with an extremely difficult problem, I recite the tablet of Ahmad 3 times a day for 9 days. And when I am faced with a problem that is completely impossible, and there is and can be no solution, I use the tablet of Ahmad 9 times a day for 9 days, and the problem is always solved." Chapter 2, Europe. I'm going to do this in this section. I'm going to show you pictures of the places I can't talk about because I just did not have time. 1926 in pictures. After 3 months of touring England and Scotland, speaking and attending the Universal Esperanto Congress, Martha came back to London. And I want to show you something because I think it's very interesting. Martha was very, very organized. On the left on this slide, you can see a calling card that Martha had printed for London with her credentials, the dates of her stay in London during September and October until October 15th, and then her subjects, the Baha'i movement in Christianity, the Baha'i viewpoint on immortality, life after death. On the 27th of October, 1926, Martha had a big interview on the radio station. It was a massive interview, and it was the radio station was interviewing her about her visit to all the British dominions. She'd visited 7 of the 11 British dominions in the last years. And so that is an announcement in the newspaper of Martha Root speaking, "An American woman looks at the dominions." On the 18th of November, 1926, Martha boarded the Royal Holland Lloyd steamer Galeria, bound for Portugal. On the top, in the middle, in the center, is the ship manifest with Martha's name. And you have her passport on the bottom left, and on the right, you have her visas for Germany and Spain. The Esperanto Brotherhood. This is a very important topic. Martha Root was the first person to ever bring the Baha'i faith to the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia in 1927. This is Riga, Latvia. Martha knew no one in Riga when she arrived, but the Esperantists assembled at the station to welcome her, waving the green Esperanto flag. The next 5 pictures are going to be Esperantists in Europe in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Not necessarily Estonia or Latvia, but before that, 2 articles, one in a newspaper in Riga, in Latvia, and the second is an article from Estonia about her stay, even though it was very brief. Now, when Martha left Riga at midnight, the very day she arrived, she had 25 new friends who accompanied her to the train station. And a young boy had gone ahead to sit in 3rd class to save Martha's seat for 2 hours. If he hadn't done that, she would have been standing. Martha's power of attraction was phenomenal, but Esperanto was a lifeline to Martha wherever she went in the world, and she was filled with gratitude for her Esperanto brothers and sisters. Do you wonder that I love the Esperantists and feel grateful to them? In little kindnesses and in big ones, they have opened Europe. What Martha means by this is that there were no Baha'i communities or institutions or Baha'i infrastructures anywhere Martha went, barely. And the Esperantists, they acted like a proto-Baha'i community. They did for Martha what Baha'is would have done if there had been any Baha'is in these places. So Esperantists were crucial to Martha's success. Sacred Earth. This is a photograph of the Universal Esperanto Congress in Gdansk, Poland. Something very special had been planned in Poland for the Esperanto Congress. They decided to plant an oak tree to commemorate 25 years since the first Esperanto gathering. And in order to do that, they gathered earth from around the world to feed the tree as a symbol for Esperanto. Martha never missed a historic opportunity. The Greatest Holy Leaf sent her soil from the shrines of Baha'u'llah, the Bab, and Abdul Baha, and Roy Wilhelm sent her soil from Teaneck, New Jersey, where Abdul Baha had held a unity feast on the 19th of June, the 29th of June, 1912. And this is Martha at the tree planting, dressed in white, victorious and resplendent, having contributed 3 mounds of earth for the planting of the Jubilee tree. She is front and center, as you can see, and there's a metal plaque on the left for the image. And of course, this made the news. This is an article about how Martha brought earth to the oak planting. So this is 1927 in pictures. 1927 was a busy year. These are the 22 visas she had to get for her travels, 22 visas she had to apply for in person on top of everything else she was doing. And I would like to thank the National Baha'i Archives of the United States for these extraordinary documents. I have about 150 more visas for Martha Root's travels, but this slide is going to stand as an homage for the rest of her visas. This is Martha Root visiting Anna and Hermann Grossman. Hermann Grossman, the future hand of the cause, in Germany in February 1927. This is Martha with the Baha'is in Ruse, Bulgaria on October 18th, 1927. I actually, after a lot of research, found exactly where this picture was taken. See the lion here, you can see he has some sort of chain that he's holding, and then there's a pillar behind Martha. And so this is the Monument of Liberty. It's the perfect place for a group photo with Martha Root, one of the 20th century's most passionate advocates for peace. So that's the original photo, and this is the monument today with the lion and the chain that he's holding. Like unto a ball of fire. This is very special, and I'm going to be sharing quite a number of tributes of The Guardian to Martha Root. What you're looking at here is just, it's exquisite. It's 4 paragraphs in Persian, arranged by The Guardian, handwritten by The Guardian's beautiful Persian handwriting. It's a letter dated November 1927, extolling Martha's services in Persian. I want to thank Turaj Amini because he was able to type this difficult to read handwriting. And I want to thank Adi Masumian for providing us with a beautiful provisional translation of this important letter. And I'm going to share just a few excerpts. I'm going to show you the Persian paragraphs and I'm going to read them in English. One of the handmaidens of Baha'u'llah, may my spirit be offered up for the lowliest of his servants, possessed of but meager means and frail constitution, bereft of companion or guide, yet armed with peerless determination and matchless detachment, hastened to the lands of Bulgaria and Slavonia. Like unto a ball of fire, did that herald of God's cause lift up her head in that mysterious clime, raising her call to both sovereign and subject. She laid bare the mother book before Her Majesty the Queen, expounded the verities of the Baha'i faith without fear or dissimulation. Before long, that Queen's stirring pronouncements from the Balkans realm reached in quick succession the populace and state officials in the cities of America. Swift as the twinkling of an eye, the royal summons was circulated in thousands of domestic and foreign papers and publications. The ring bearing the greatest name came to adorn the finger of sovereigns. Martha's luggage. None of the photos here, except for one, are of Martha's luggage. Martha Root traveled with a great deal of luggage. Numbers vary, but the number we hear the most is that she had 17 pieces of luggage. Only 2 of these 17 pieces of luggage had Martha's personal affairs, her clothing and her toiletries. There were 15 cases of papers and Baha'i books, pamphlets and Baha'i literature. The loose leaves were kept in packages, which Martha folded in thin cotton fabric. Martha also traveled with radio talks and photographs of all the kings and queens and emperors who had received tablets of Baha'u'llah. Martha had one suitcase that contained a portable kitchen that was a gift from Lady Blumfield. And this is actually a detail of Martha's tote bag. So this is from Dwayne Troxell, who is one of the experts of the life of Martha Root for the last few decades. This was a very large and spacious tote bag that was a gift from Roy Wilhelm, and the bag had a story. Martha Root told her friend Lucy, Roy Wilhelm had this bag made for me, and it's most useful for it holds a lot. When Martha sailed, it was relatively easy. She had to count her luggage as it was loaded and count it before it was unloaded and then at the hotel again. But as much as Martha sailed in her life across the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, Martha battled seasickness and was never a fan of steamships. She once told a friend, I'm always happy to leave a boat. Martha much preferred traveling by train. But train travel brought its own difficulties. When you traveled first class, like in this picture in the 1920s or 30s, if you were going from Genoa, Italy to Geneva, Switzerland, your car would probably be at the front. And because you were first class, it would just go straight to Genoa, and all the back train cars would just switch off for all the little cities that they were stopping in. So When Martha traveled from Genoa to Geneva, she traveled third class. And because she wasn't in first class, she had to switch trains 6 times with all her luggage every time. Then there was overcrowding at the border station and she missed one of her trains. And so this was horrifying. But what did Martha have to say about it? She said, by missing the train and waiting from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the station, I traveled through this beautiful Switzerland in the daylight. The inspector was from Brooklyn. He took me into the first class waiting room and made me very comfortable. Just always cheerful about the positive, no matter how difficult her circumstances are. Now, I spoke at the beginning about all the universities that Martha traveled to in Germany, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But I want to tell you something absolutely extraordinary. When Martha was 1 month into her 7 month tour of German universities, The Guardian called attention to her services very publicly in a letter dated February 12, 1929, addressed to the Baha'is of the West and published in the Baha'i News. Now, this is something Shoghi Effendi almost never did. Rarely, sometimes with Valiu Lavarha, he would praise him. But this public praise of Martha is very, very, very rare for The Guardian. At the end of the letter, he says, and in conclusion, I wish in a few words to pay a tribute, however inadequate, to the magnificent services rendered by that exemplary and indefatigable teacher of the faith, our dearly loved sister, Miss Martha Root. Her international travels on behalf of the Baha'i faith, so wide in their range, so extensive in their duration, so inspiring in their result, will adorn and enrich the annals of God's immortal faith. Her earliest journeys to the southernmost limits of the American continent, to India and to South Africa, to the eastern confines of Asia, to the islands of the southern seas, and the Scandinavian countries to the north. Her most recent contact with rulers and crown heads of Europe, and the impressions with her undaunted spirit created in royal circles in the Balkan countries. Her close affiliation with international organizations, peace societies, humanitarian movements, and Esperantist circles, and her latest victories in the university circles of Germany, which she was 1 month into 7 months, but The Guardian is still praising her for her efforts. All constitute a compelling evidence of what the power of Baha'u'llah can achieve. These historic labors, pursued single-handed and in circumstances of financial stringency and ill health, have been characterized throughout by a spirit of fidelity, of self-effacement, of thoroughness and vigor that none has excelled. And then The Guardian ends his letter with an amazing appeal on behalf of Martha Root. I appeal to individual believers and Baha'i assemblies alike to reinforce by every possible means the earnest strivings of such a precious soul, to respond speedily and entirely to every request that from time to time she may feel moved to address her fellow workers in every land, to strive to attain the high standard of stewardship she has set, and to pray from the very depths of their heart for the uninterrupted continuance of her noble endeavors. Absolutely stunning. Chapter 3, Martha's Second Pilgrimage. These two gorgeous photos of Queen Marie's Bulgarian palace in Tehnyahuyuva are courtesy of Dr. Nejati Alkan. On her way to Haifa after her fourth audience with Queen Marie on 28th of September 1929, Martha sailed from Istanbul, stopped in Rhodes, Greece, and Larnaca, Cyprus for 1 day. And the following 4 photographs were shared with me by the Cyprus National Baha'i Archives. I would like to thank them for this. This is really incredible. It's the only picture I've ever seen of Martha's personal diary. All the dates are in German, so it's obvious she bought the book in Germany. And October 27th was when she was in Cyprus, in Larnaca, for a single day. She's writing about meeting a woman named Olympia T. Rosino, who was an English speaker. And this is very cute because if you remember 10 years ago when she was in South America, she used to write the number of newspapers and population of every city. And 10 years later, she's doing the same thing. This is the population of Nicosia and Famagusta in 1929. Nicosia, 23,000, and Famagusta, 7,000. And of course, this is such an incredible photograph. So thank you to the Archives of Cyprus. Despite such a brief visit, we see a book presented by Martha Root on the 27th of October. October is written as a Roman numeral X, 27X 29, 27 October 1929. It's Baha'u'llah and the New Era, presented to the Cyprus Public Library. This is Martha Root in Cairo, Egypt, in November 1929. She is meeting a group of Esperantists, Egyptian Esperantists, and Mr. Ali Yazdi is at her left in the front row. Haifa. Finally, Martha was back in Haifa for her second pilgrimage. She arrived on the 25th of November. She would stay for exactly 1 month. She would leave on the 25th of December. When Shoghi Effendi greeted her, he said, "Martha, always remember what I have told you. I wish you to take very good care of your health." Martha the Guardian spoke for some time, and Martha had the joy of hearing Shoghi Effendi chant at the shrines. She told Roy Wilhelms, "He is my great ideal of a guardian." After a few days, after Martha had arrived, Shoghi Effendi caught an illness that kept him bedridden for the rest of Martha's pilgrimage. Shoghi Effendi didn't forget Martha and sent very strict instructions to the Holy Family to protect his precious stalwart servant. Do not give her anything to do. She must rest. In 1929, the Greatest Holy Leaf was 82 years old, and she had caught pneumonia. But Martha saw her, and I quote, "She is perfectly beautiful and very exquisite." When the Greatest Holy Leaf told Martha that she would pray for her success in service, Martha made a request. She said, please to pray for me selflessness, evanescence, and a love that would radiate to every soul I ever meet. Before leaving, the Greatest Holy Leaf gave Martha a beautiful little red ringstone. This is not it, as a token of her love. And apparently, Martha's habit of giving away precious relics was so well known that there was a nosy busybody in the room present, a Baha'i, who didn't approve of this. And this Baha'i told the Greatest Holy Leaf, "Should not Martha always keep the ring?" And of course, the Greatest Holy Leaf's response was just absolutely perfect. She said, "I could not say that. I know if she gives it away, it will be a great sacrifice, for it is very dear to her. But if she feels it would do a great service to the cause somewhere, and she gave it, it would do good." How perfect is the Greatest Holy Leaf? Around the 22nd of December 1929, Shoghi Effendi was finally well enough to see Martha again and urged her to stay. But not even the Guardian could stop Martha from her great teaching work. She left 3 days later. Chapter 4, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. So, to cross the Syrian desert between Damascus and Baghdad, Martha and her companions went through a travel company that organized a large caravan of cars. There were no paved roads. They were driving on the sand, and there were no road signs. So the drivers had to follow the wheel imprints of the cars that in front of them. And they drove from morning to midnight without stopping. The caravan eventually stopped by a well in the desert that had been dug by the British and improvised camping grounds to catch a few hours of rest. By 5 a.m., so after 5 hours of rest, they were on the road again, and they arrived at the border with Iraq 7 hours later at 2 p.m. And Martha, speaking about this trip, said, "I just love this woman." She said, "This is the easiest trip I ever took. Like literally everybody else was dying, and she was just like, this was so easy. Iraq. Of course, the highlight of Martha's visit to Iraq was her audience on the 2nd of January 1930 with King Faisal. This is a photograph of Martha with the Baha'is in Baghdad in January 1930. She spent 12 days in Iraq and visited Awashik, a wonderful Baha'i village, 72 kilometers, 45 miles away from Baghdad. This is a photograph of Martha in Baghdad with a group of Baha'is. And she traveled 530 kilometers, 300 miles to Basra. The people in Basra were so attracted to Martha that they would wait for her to come out of her hotel, and the crowd would follow her in the streets, sometimes as many as 100 people. And the incident was so remarkable, it made the news of the Anglo-Persian Oil Company's newsletter. Martha's credentials. This is a photograph of the National Spiritual Assembly of Baha'is in Iran in 1934. And she was there in 1930, 4 years earlier, but I couldn't find a photograph of the NSA in 1930. The Guardian entrusted Martha with the most exquisite credentials to introduce her to the Baha'i institutions in Iran. Miss Martha Root, pride of all believers, and foremost among the teachers of God's faith, whether men or women, is proceeding to Iran. It is incumbent upon all the friends of God and the handmaids of the merciful in that blessed land to welcome this precious personage with heart and soul, in glorification of God's cause, but with due wisdom and dignity. They should offer hospitality with utmost respect and loving kindness, convene gatherings and hold festivities, and prove in words and deeds their pride in being related to a person who has been singled out by God and has noised abroad the fame of the cause of Baha'u'llah. For this priceless believer has, with astonishing power, unsurpassed courage, and amazing steadfastness, raised the call of Ya Baha'u'llah Pa among people in the highest ranks. She has brought the sacred name of the faith of God to the attention of the potentates of the earth, its ministers, intellectuals, and sovereigns. She has glorified the oppressed and struggling Baha'i community of that land in the eyes of the prominent people of the world and endeared it to them. Light upon light. These are all the photographs of Martha Root in Iran that I have. I'm going to go through them one by one. Martha's stay was light upon light, moment after moment of extreme and profound spirituality, and a mystical communion between the isolated Baha'is in Iran and Martha, a Western believer and star servant of Baha'u'llah, who had met both the Guardian and the Greatest Holy Leaf. One man reverently shook her hand and said, "These are the hands of Shoghi Effendi. I long to take the hand that has touched Shoghi Effendi's beloved hand." Another woman told Martha, "We can never go to see the Greatest Holy Leaf, but we thank God we can see you who have seen her." Words of Martha Root's coming spread like wildfires, and Baha'is everywhere, even in the smallest villages, gave her a royal welcome, staying up all night, lining the roads for miles, waiting to catch a glimpse of her. Everywhere Martha went, she spoke to hundreds, sometimes thousands of Baha'is. Western Iran. This is Martha Root with the Baha'is of Hamadan. On the road to Hamadan, Martha traveled through the snowy mountains with an escort of 20 cars, some of them filled with women. Someone remarked to Martha, "Not even emperors and kings have 20 motor cars awaiting their approach." When they entered Ghazvin, the birthplace of Tahirih, villagers in traditional costumes of green and apple pink and white motioned the car to stop. They played the tar, the iconic Persian six-stringed lute, and danced gracefully and sang a salute to the spring season. Bowing low, the villagers motioned the driver to pass. Martha never found out if the villagers were Baha'is. This is the Grand Hotel in Ghazvin. Martha stayed in this hotel. Right across the hall from her hotel room, she was being watched by 5 soldiers. Martha asked a Baha'i, "Why are those men always watching me?" The Baha'i replied, "Everyone in Persia is watching you." The only book Martha ever wrote was Tahir the Pure, Iran's Greatest Woman, and she began writing it in Razvin. The following 4 photos are all of Tahir's home. Martha was the first Westerner to ever set foot in Tahir's childhood home. It was a large house with lovely, intricate lattice work. Tahir's nephew showed Martha the women's room of the palace where Tahir had been born, the quaint artistic library on the second floor where she had sat and studies as a little girl, the cellar where her father had kept her under house arrest in 1848. When she reached Tahir's room, Martha knelt, bowed her forehead to the floor, and prayed. Tahir's relatives were watching. Here was this Western woman, an American on top of that, from the other side of the planet, paying such a respectful and moving homage to their martyred, revered family members. Tehran. The numbers in Iran were utterly astounding. Several thousand Baha'is asked Martha to stop at Karaj, a suburb 30 kilometers, 19 miles northwest from the gates of Tehran, from the direction of Razvin, to welcome her. I want to thank my dear friend Farzad Ghasemi for helping me translate the English into Persian and make it make sense. Rumors were rampant in Tehran. And even before Martha Root arrived, a newspaper article reported that a woman was soon going to come to Tehran who was the daughter of Abdul Baha, but wore Western American clothing and spoke English to deceive people. The article added suspiciously, "She is a fisher of kings." Martha visited Dr. Susan Mooney, who you see here holding the greatest name on this photograph in Iran. She was an American physician and teacher who had been sent to Iran by Abdul Baha to work with women. On the 1st of March 1930, Martha Root visited the Sia Chal with Lutfullah Hakim and 3 members of the Assembly of Tehran, and then they visited the Baha'i cemetery and said prayers. Martha visited the graves of Varqa and Ruhollah, his father and son who were martyred in 1896 when Ruhollah was only 12 years old. Varqa and Ruhollah are the first 2 on the left. This photograph was taken shortly before their martyrdom. This photo and the next one are photos of Martha Root with the Baha'is of Tehran. I think the first one is with the women and the second one is with the men. Martha celebrated Nowruz in Tehran on the 21st of March, 1930. 2,300 people attended, including 100 who were not Baha'is. As Martha spoke, Lutfullah Hakim recalled, "Miss Root rose and spoke, her face shining. We could see the light around her, even from far off. Her talk was on the greatness of the Baha'i cause and the importance of Persia. She spoke with such enthusiasm and courage that everyone was deeply affected." Southern Iran. Martha arrived in Shiraz, the birthplace of the Bab. She arrived on the 29th of April, 1930. And her arrival to Shiraz, where the Baha'i dispensation, the Babi dispensation, the Baha'i era were all born on the 23rd of May, 1844, were mystical. There's no other word for it. Martha arrived in the middle of spring with flowers blooming everywhere and filling the air with their fragrance. As she was approaching Shiraz, a few kilometers out of the city, men riding horses approached her car to greet her on behalf of the thousands of Baha'is in Shiraz and its vicinity. The horsemen bowed to Martha, and they proceeded to perform acrobatics in her honor, reaching down and grabbing pebbles as they galloped by her. The next 2, 3, 4. The next 4 photos are either of the House of the Bab or details of the House of the Bab. On the 5th of May, 1930, after a long walk through dark and narrow streets of Shiraz and its long passages, Martha Root was led to the House of the Bab. An eyewitness was with her, said that as soon as Martha caught sight of the Bab's house, she fell to her knees and began weeping, saying, "To think that such a great message should have come from such a small house." One of the Afnans, the members of the family of the Bab, brought Martha a metal trunk full of the writings of the Bab. Martha pressed her face to it and kissed it fervently. When she entered the upper room of the Bab's house where he had declared his mission to Mullah Hussein on the 23rd of May, 1844, 86 years before, she kissed the walls of that room. Martha's third talk in Shiraz was in a garden that had been sumptuously decorated by the Baha'is. She spoke to 2,000 people, including Muslims and Christian missionaries. She spoke about Abdul Baha's journeys to the West, and she spoke very reverently about Islam and Christianity. When she had finished her talk, the applause went on and on. On her second visit to the house of the Bab, Martha walked in the garden and plucked leaves from the orange tree the Bab had planted to send back to the United States. Bushir, where the Bab had worked as a merchant for 6 years, was the main port in the southern part of Iran. And it was Martha's last stop. But to travel from Shiraz to Bushir by road wasn't that very long. But the problem is that spring floods had washed away all the other roads, and Martha had no option but to fly there. And this is interesting because Martha only flew in an airplane once in her life. It was her flight from Shiraz to Bushir in May 1930, and she absolutely loved it. Martha's visit to Iran. The local spiritual assembly of Tehran wrote a moving letter about Martha's visit, detailing the effect she had on the community. We perceived the fervor and the intensity of the feelings of the audiences and the profound effect which Martha Root's word emanating from a divinely confirmed source produced upon those hearing her, who could scarcely repress the flow of tears of exaltation and who rejoiced in the realization of true love and oneness taught by Baha'u'llah. The Baha'is of Tehran regard Martha Root as an angel of purity and as a true Baha'i, that is, the possessor of all human virtues. Chapter 5, India, China, and Japan. India. Martha's 1930 visit to India was marred by the political trouble and tensions in India. Gandhi had been imprisoned for protesting the British monopoly on salt. Shortly after arriving, Martha visited Gandhi's second-in-command, Sarojini Naidu, who you see here on this picture next to Gandhi, at Yeravda prison, but she was not able to meet Gandhi. The highlight of Martha's stay in India was as her time as the guest of the Maharaja of Patiala on his sprawling estate in Chail, a hill station in Himachal Pradesh. She watched the Maharaja play polo and then taught him the faith. In Varanasi, Martha met the son of the Maharaja of Benares, His Highness Kunwar Aditya Narayan Singh Bahadur. And in Kolkata, she had an audience with Sir Pratap Chandra Banjdev, the Maharaja of Mayurbhanj. Because of the political climate in India, Martha hadn't been as productive as she would have wanted, and she was deeply disappointed. 7 years from then, in 1937, 1938, Martha would return to India and more than make up for it. She would do the best work of her life. China. In China, Martha's lectures received wonderful press coverage well in advance of the events. And I want to show you something kind of interesting, how Martha created a buzz. So 15 days before her arrival in Shanghai and her talk in Shanghai, on the 9th of September 1930, Martha has a teaser published for her speaking engagement. On all these next photographs, I highlighted in blue Martha's name. So basically it says, all those interested in the Baha'i movement, Martha Root's coming, get ready. On Sunday, September 21st, 4 days before her talk, she publishes an announcement which now says that the date and time. It's at the Royal Asiatic Society Hall on Wednesday, 24th of September, 1930 at 6 p.m. The same announcement is published on Monday, September 22nd, Tuesday, September 23rd, the day before the talk, but this time Martha adds a bio and a description of the talk. Then on the day of the talk, on Wednesday, September 23rd, the same announcement is published. And on Thursday, September 25th, the day after the talk, there is a long summary of her presentation. So she is a genius at creating a buzz. Returning to China was very rewarding for Martha because she had sown seeds in 1930, in 1923, 7 years before, and the seeds had blossomed. Many Chinese scholars had become Baha'is, including Yun Xiang Cao of Tsinghua University, who offered to translate Baha'u'llah era into Chinese. Japan. Martha arrived in Japan on the 27th of October, 1930, for a 2-month stay. Of course, her most successful encounters in Japan were with Mr. Seiji Noma, the magazine king of Japan. This man is fabulous. And the highlight of her stay was her audience with the minister of the imperial household, to Emperor Hirohito, to whom she transmitted the guardian's greetings and a stunning prayer rug from Kashan and the calligraphy of a phoenix. Chapter 6, the United States and Canada. The law of Martha's diminishing stays. This is something that Mabel Garris mentions, and I made it into a mathematical law. From the moment of Martha's first journey around the world in 1915 to visit Baha'i community, to the day she leaves America for the last time in 1937, there is a clear pattern to Martha's stays in North America. Every time she returned to the United States would be shorter than the previous. After her first journey in 1915, Martha stayed 4 years in the US. After her second journey in 1919, Martha stayed 2 years. After her third journey in 1921, Martha stayed 15 months. After her fourth and longest journey in 1931, she stayed 13 months. And after her fifth journey in 1936, she stayed 10 months. So here is 1931 and 1932 in pictures. This is on June 12th, 1931, during her stay in the United States. Martha had a chance to visit her closest friend and spiritual father, Roy Wilhelm, at Evergreen Cabin in Teaneck, New Jersey. And this photograph was taken, and thank you to the Archives of the United States for providing it for me, because it's an amazing photograph. On this photograph are the most enkindled Baha'is in America, including 6 members of the National Spiritual Assembly and 5 future hands of the cause. I'm going to mention them. Lori Wilhelm, Roy's mother. Roy Wilhelm, member of the National Assembly and future hand of the cause. Martha Root, dressed in white, as usual, future hand of the cause. Horace Hawley, member of the National Assembly and future hand of the cause. Louis Gregory, member of the National Assembly and future hand of the cause. In the back, climbing on a tree, is Alfred Lunt, member of the NSA, and Bertha Herkoltz, Siegfried Schopfloscher, sitting on a trunk, I think, member of the National Spiritual Assembly and future hand of the cause, and Carl Scheffler, member of the National Spiritual Assembly. So Martha's trip to the United States, and these are all articles from Hawaii. These are also all articles from Hawaii. She was the subject of tons of articles. She was a celebrity now. Definitely a celebrity. After 15 years of traveling on every continent speaking about the faith, Martha was a star speaker. She was a media personality, and everywhere she went was huge news. Now, because of lack of time, I haven't had much chance to dwell on her stay in America, but I want to share with you possibly, for me, the most moving aspect of her trip to the United States, which actually took place in Canada, in Montreal. In Montreal, Martha was a guest of William Sutherland Maxwell and May Maxwell, who you see on the slide. She stayed in the home in which they had hosted Abdu'l-Baha in August, September 1912. Now, one of the things Martha wanted to do in Montreal was speak on the radio about the Baha'i faith. Everyone told her it was impossible. It was a Catholic city, and they would not allow talk about another religion on the airwaves. You know Martha. By this point, you know Martha. When something is impossible, that is when she just committed and made it her goal. Martha asked May Maxwell to take her to meet the general director of the radio station. As she was walking out of the Maxwell home for her meeting, Martha plucked two tulips from a vase in the alcove in the hallway. And Bahia Randall Winkler was there and asked Martha, Martha, what do you want those for? Martha replied, oh, I don't know, but I'm just taking them. At the time when everyone was extremely proper and formal in the 30s, and bouquets of flower were serious affairs, well packaged and well put together, walk out holding two naked tulips by the stems, probably dripping, was frankly unheard of. So they arrived at the station with Martha still holding these two tulips by the stem. And when they got out of the elevator, they stepped into a waiting room and explained who they were there to see. The manager's door was open onto this hallway, and he looked out and he saw Martha and he said, come in, come in. So into the station manager's office, Martha walked, and she, without a word, just handed him these two tulips. And in utter surprise, the manager said, how did you know? The man was Dutch. He went on, he said, today is a special holiday in Holland, and nothing could have been more beautiful to me today than to receive these two tulips. Now, what can I do for you? Martha, animated by the Holy Spirit, really, following her instinct without even knowing why she was taking those two tulips, had made her way directly into the man's heart, and he gave her a widely publicized 30-minute interview on the Baha'i radio in Montreal. Martha used statements about the faith made by prominent figures, which she had carefully collected over the years. It was the first time that the Baha'i faith was mentioned in Canadian airwaves, and that the names Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Baha'i had been aired on the radio. Months later, May Maxwell wrote a letter to her daughter Mary, the future Ruhiya Khanum, wife of Shoghi Effendi, and she told her about Martha's visit. Now, the next slide is newspaper articles in Montreal about Martha's visit. This has been a wonderful year for this entire continent. Through the visit of Martha Root, who has both inwardly and outwardly thrown open the doors for the reception of the cause. Did you know that Shoghi Effendi said that she was the greatest teacher of the cause that the cause had ever produced, either in the East or the West? Chapter 7, Last Journey Through Europe. In 1932, Shoghi Effendi sent 4 cables, one after the other, on the very same day, to the Baha'is in America, to the Baha'is in New Zealand, to the Baha'is in Myanmar, and to just Martha Root in Europe, about the urgency of translating Baha'u'llah in the new era. Because it was a priority for The Guardian, it became a priority for Martha Root, and the last years of her life, she would be passionate about translating Baha'u'llah in the new era in every language she could. She became a one-woman publishing house, and her efforts were superhuman. She translated Baha'u'llah in the new era into Serbian. And for these next few slides, the title of Baha'u'llah in the new era is translated in the language, and in the background is one of the first paragraphs in the language. So she translated it into Serbian, Greek, Czech, Hungarian, Romanian, and Norwegian. This is a July 12th, 1933 photo showing Martha Root with Draga Ilic, the Serbian translator for Baha'u'llah in the New Era, holding the newly published book. And this is Martha in Athens, Greece, with her Greek translator, Dionysos Devaris. Edirne. Martha had traveled twice to Turkey, in 1927, where she'd been to Istanbul, and in 1929, when she'd been to Istanbul, but also Ankara. But she'd never visited Edirne, where Baha'u'llah had been exiled for 5 years between 1863 and 1868. Now, Shoghi Effendi encouraged Martha to take this trip because it had historical significance. He hoped that she would be able to uncover something no one had ever uncovered before and find the location of all the houses where Baha'u'llah had stayed during his 3rd exile. And who better than a world-famous journalist? So Martha Root arrived on the 17th of October, 1933 with Mary and Jack, and within 3 weeks, she found all the houses. The hardest to found was the first one, the caravanserai, the Qani Arab caravanserai, where the Holy Family stayed 3 nights when they first arrived. And these are the ruins of the caravanserai. Then the house in Moradiyeh was the first house in which they lived, and they moved again. And then the other houses of Baha'u'llah were the house of Amrullah, the house of Reza Beg, which we can visit on pilgrimage today, and the house of Izzat Aka. Marian and Martha met an old Turkish man who's 85 years old. His name was Mustafa Beg. Mustafa Beg remembered delivering yogurt to Baha'u'llah, who gave him Persian rice in return. He remembered that Baha'u'llah had given them so many grapes from his garden. They met another old Turkish man who said that Baha'u'llah had a kitchen for the poor. And Martha was very aware of the historic journey she just performed because she wrote a 12-page article about it in Baha'i World Volume 5 called A Visit to Adrianople. And this is one of the journalistic efforts of Martha while she was in Edirne. She wrote articles as always, and she was the guest of the governor, the mayor, the prefect of police, and the director of mosques in the municipal building on the 10th annual Turkish Republic Day. And this is a photo of that event on the 29th of October, 1933. And you have Martha Root in the center, sort of, and you have Mary and Jack on the right edge of the photograph. The fall. This is a photograph of Martha in Stockholm on the 24th of August, 1934, at the 26th Universal European Esperanto Congress. She's wearing a sweater that her best friend Lucy Wilson knitted for her. So Martha was in Stockholm until mid-December 1934, working and writing and teaching, of course. And one of her main topics was the education system in Sweden. And she wrote a lovely article about various educational systems and the Stockholm Bureau for Boys. This is actually, if you look, she's wearing the same sweater, but she has a different pose. She's holding the greatest name next to her face. So it seems like she must have gone to a professional studio to get this photograph taken. This is an article that was published in Estonia. Things were going well for Martha in Stockholm until she had a very bad fall at the Grand Hotel on the 6th of December, 1934. She had to be taken to the hospital, something she had avoided for 20 years, probably. And she refused to spend the night. So she returned to her hotel, and this fall would mark the beginning of a series of health problems for Martha. In Oslo, Norway, in December 1935, Martha arrived with a full schedule mapped out. But then within a week, she caught a flu so serious that she almost died, and it would take her 4 months to recover. This is Martha on the left with Joanna Schubart on the right, a Baha'i and a nurse living in Oslo, who moved into Martha's room to take care of her. The Guardian sent a very worried telegram on the 22nd of January, 1935. Distressed your illness, urge absolute rest, praying fervently, Shogi. This is from the archives of the National Archives of the United States. It's a bill for the hotel in Oslo. And I want to thank Alex Boyson for helping me translate the bill. I mean, it's just a bill for her stay in the hotel, but he helped me locate the hospital, which you see on the photograph here on the right. When Martha's flu improved, she began fainting. In the end, a very good, very talented doctor found the real problem. So it wasn't the flu, and it wasn't her heart condition. Martha was malnourished. She was malnourished. That's why she almost died. Because of the soaring inflation, this is a photograph of the inflation in the 1930s in Europe, Martha had been spending less and less money on food, and she had effectively starved herself. These are 4 different hotel bills that show that Martha survived on tea, coffee, and bread rolls. Martha had come very close to dying. Iceland. So Martha recovered and accomplished one of her dreams in life was to visit Iceland. It had maintained a policy of political neutrality and was widely recognized for its high literacy rates and strong social welfare. Martha was enthralled by the beauty of Iceland. It had jagged snow-capped mountain peaks, its glaciers, its magnificent waterfalls, and clean, fresh air. Martha wasn't the first Baha'i in Iceland, but she was the first person who had the faith published in the newspapers and mentioned on the radio. And these are all Icelandic newspaper articles about Martha Root's visit and about the Baha'i faith. Stupendous efforts. Stockholm. I want to go back a little bit after Iceland. I didn't want to finish with Iceland. I wanted to finish with this, even though this happened before Iceland. While Martha was in Stockholm, before she went to Norway and almost died, she received a letter on September 9th, 1934, signed by the Guardian's secretary. The letter ends and is covered in gray here. The rest of the letter in white, and then the blown up portion on the right is the handwritten postscript that takes up the bottom half of the page and along the left margin of the page. So to conclude today's presentation, I want to read you 4 sentences from the hand of the Guardian. You are carrying aloft with inspiring courage and exemplary zeal and constancy the standard of Baha'u'llah. You are shedding imperishable luster on his faith. You are setting an immortal example to his followers. You are rearing for yourself a goodly mansion in his kingdom. Martha sailed home for the last time on the Berengsford. Her 5th journey had lasted 4 years, 7 months, and 4 days. She'd met royalty and presidents, given countless radio lectures, advanced the translations of Baha'i literature throughout Europe. But she had also been sicker than she had ever been. The cancer was spreading, and Martha had a limited time to expend her remaining energies to serve Shoghi Effendi and spread the teachings of Baha'u'llah. She would begin at home before leaving for her final heroic journey to Asia and the Pacific. Dear friends, that's it for today. And next week is our very last session, the end of Martha's life, but also her consecration by the Guardian and her consecration of her service with the best work she ever did